Gabby, and I am a chef here in Central New Jersey, and my specialty and passion is local everything. It's a huge honor to use the beloved New Jersey tomato to make my family recipe, which is a Sicilian meatball in fresh tomato sauce. It reminds me of my childhood when I learned how to make tomatoes from my aunt's rooftop garden, and I chopped up the tomatoes with the sauce with my little hands, and we didn't use local New Jersey tomatoes, so they weren't as good, of course, but today I'm going to use a variety of North Slope Farms beautiful heirloom tomatoes, sauce tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, basil I just picked, parsley I just picked, and some interesting Sicilian ingredients that you may not usually put in a meatball, like cinnamon and lemon zest and pine nuts, raisins. I'm gonna get started here with our first ingredient to make the sauce, and I'm gonna start with the sauce so that while that's going and that's bubbling and cooking, I can get started on the meatball ingredients, and then we'll poach the meatballs inside of the tomato sauce so they absorb all that delicious flavor. So the first thing I'm gonna do is peel my onions, and I'll just throw it right on the ground because we're on a farm and the earth will just gobble it up for us. These were curing in Mike's greenhouse, so you really can't get any fresher than that. So I'm gonna cut these onions into a small dice. So I'm gonna put about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fat cloves of garlic. Garlic and tomato, best friends for life. Okay, I'm gonna give this a rough chop. I'm gonna put this into my pot of onions, put some oil in here, and get it cooking. There we go. And I'm gonna put that at like a medium-high heat. And so while that's cooking, that's gonna give me plenty of time to chop up all the tomatoes. Okay, so look at this beautiful plum sauce tomato. These, you can tell, have a thicker wall than, let's say, an heirloom tomato. These are really soft and watery and tender, and these are a little more firm. Some people will even go as far as removing the seeds and water inside just to get the paste from the wall of the tomato, but we're making a fresh sauce, and this is rustic style, and I don't feel the need to go through that process because I want the whole thing. I like a light tomato sauce, so we're just gonna put the whole thing in there. And I'm gonna cut these into a medium dice. So I'm using some heirlooms too, and these are so beautiful. These have green and yellow and red and orange, and I like to put a variety of tomatoes in my sauce, and it's kind of like cider in that way, where you get tomatoes of all different acidities and wateriness and sweetness, and then it all comes together and makes its own unique flavor. You really use whatever you have. Look at all these beautiful colors in here. So this is gonna cook for a while. This is gonna cook for 20, 30 minutes. Okay, so the next part of this recipe is the meatballs, the purpetti. And the dialect and the region that of Sicily gives a different name for the meatballs, and even a different style. So the influence of these meatballs is the North African, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, European fusion all together. We have beef, we have pine nuts, we have raisins, Parmesan cheese, garlic, which I'll show you as we go along. So I have the meat inside the bowl. And you can get this beef, this is like a 80-20 meat to fat marbling. You can use pork. I like to use a blend of pork and beef together, but I'm doing a small batch today of a classic beef meatball. So I just have 1 pound in here. and I'm gonna put 2 eggs. I'm gonna start with 2 eggs. I like a really light and fluffy meatball, so in that case you would put even more eggs. Like my uncle would say, you gotta put a lot of eggs in there, make it really nice and fluffy. Seasoned breadcrumbs, 1/3 cup to 1/2 cup. Parmesan cheese, I know it's more fun to grate it yourself, but the cute little co-op that I went to before filming this video did not have a big block of Parmesan for me to grate, so we're using the already grated stuff. So again, you want to be generous, don't be cheap with the cheese, and put about 1/3 cup, maybe the same amount that you did the breadcrumbs. We're gonna do the lemon zest. In the winter time, I would probably use oranges. Lemon, a little bit brighter, and it goes with the raisins and the cinnamon. I know it sounds like a funky combination, but it works. It brightens the meatball. Now I'm gonna put some pine nuts, and this adds some texture and sweetness to the meatball. So I'm gonna put like a little handful, and then we're gonna add some cinnamon. I would say no one that I know puts cinnamon in their meatballs, but this is a special kind of meatball. And add some salt. So we have, I'm gonna put a heaping, maybe 2 teaspoons. And I'm gonna chop some raisins. Maybe like 1/3 cup of raisins. Now we're gonna do some parsley that we just picked. So I'm gonna pick them off the stems. And the tomatoes are bubbling nicely. There, that's pretty much almost ready to be blended. And then once our meatball mix is done, we could poach it. Poach the meatballs. So this is about, I would say, also maybe 1/3 cup of parsley. Parsley and lemon, best friends. Parsley, lemon, Parmesan, garlic, also best friends. And the last ingredient here is the garlic. So I'm gonna do about 5 cloves, and these, because we're not cooking them on direct heat, they're getting poached inside the meatball, I'm gonna chop these a little finer. Okay, so everything's in, and now I'm gonna mix this up and see how it feels. So if you had the orange in here, it'd be a lot brighter and it would contrast the red ground beef beautifully, but the lemon and the parsley makes it look a little more summery. And you can really smell the cinnamon and the garlic and the lemon, and I mean, bring this to a party, because who's gonna have cinnamon and pine nuts in their meatballs? No one. I'm actually gonna add 1 more egg to make them a little light and fluffier. And these Mike brought in from his precious little hens. This is good to go. This is as cooked as it's gonna get for now for a fresh, quick Jersey tomato sauce. See how it's really watery? All the water has come out of the tomatoes, and all that's left is the walls and the beautiful aroma and the onion, and that's gonna blend really nicely. It's not gonna be too thin, but if it's too thick, then I might add a little more olive oil and a little water, because I like a nice light sauce. I don't like a really thick sauce. It's just, I want a whole mouthful of the tomato experience. All right, so that's good to go. I'm going to wash my hands and blend the sauce, and then we can start poaching the meatballs, and that's it. So I did a quick blend, a coarse blend, and see there's little chunks in there because we're gonna have a full tomato experience and may as well have some of the texture of the body of these beautiful heirloom, plum, and cherry tomatoes in here. And so this is a bright colored tomato sauce. It's orange. Classic tomato sauce has more of a deep red color, the stuff you'd find in the supermarket all year round, but this is summer Jersey tomato sauce. It comes in beautiful bright colors. I'm gonna start forming the meatballs here into, I would say maybe little 1-inch rounds. I like small meatballs because then you can eat more of them. So I'm gonna put one at a time, and this is my meatball poaching method. Every Italian that I know has a different way of making their meatballs. Some people only bake them and then add them into the sauce afterwards, but why waste? Why waste the flavor? Why not cook the meatballs in the tomato sauce. It's more bang for your buck. This is a very comforting winter meal. If you have a jar of fresh summer tomato sauce that you heat up in December, January and make some fresh meatballs, that's summer right there for you. A little reminder. So the way that I like to poach them, I just make a little room. Every time I put one in, I just make a little room with the spoon. And this really makes you feel like a little young nonna, a little young grandma. All right, so all the meatballs are in, so I'm gonna cover this up. But one more thing, I'm gonna tear some basil in there. So some of our fresh picked basil, I'm gonna just tear it up a little bit. And this looks so beautiful in the pot. The bright orange sauce, tomatoes, meatballs. I'll cover this up, and that should be like 10-15 minutes, and then it's done. All right, so these meatballs are done. They've been poaching for about 15-ish minutes, and I just cut one open, and that's how I tell they're done. So I'm gonna scoop them into this pretty bowl here, then add some extra sauce on top, and some things you could add to modify. You could chop up and saute some stinging nettles. You can chop up and saute some greens, scallions. These are really open to whatever you have in the kitchen, and you wanna, get it all into one delicious meatball. It will hold it all together. That's kind of the beauty of the meatballs. Pour a little extra sauce on top and eat this with bread. I'm going to tear a little basil on top, and then maybe just for fun, I will zest a little lemon just for presentation and extra brightness. And then maybe just for extra fun and presentation, just put some cherry tomatoes so everyone knows what's inside. Like that, and that's it here. This is our beautiful purpetti Sicilian meatballs with Jersey, plum, heirloom, and cherry tomatoes, grass-fed beef, fresh picked parsley, basil, cinnamon, pine nuts, and lots of other goodies. So yeah, I'm very happy to share this recipe with everybody in our farm community, and I hope that you try it, and we can celebrate the Jersey tomato in many ways, but this is one way that I do it. So thanks for watching.